What's up, everybody? Today, we're gonna have a look at what we call complex C clauses. And of course, I wrote it up here as always, but this is a little bit different from our simple C clauses in that complex C clauses are going to use perfect tenses, right? And so if you need a review of the simple C clauses, check out that video. But it's pairing, of course, C, which I have up here, means if, right? Of course, C with an accent is yes. And so, of course, we're using the C, which means if. So that's what we call them if-then clauses as well. But so the simple C clauses are, of course, as I said, a variation of C, right? If, and then you use the past subjunctive together. Those are paired together, right? And then you have on the other side to create the, finish off that hypothetical, you have the conditional tense, right? And that gives you the simple C clause. And so complex C clauses are going to do that, but they're going to use perfect tenses, right? And so whereas the simple C clauses create, sort of a hypothetical, right? If I were to have more money, I would travel more. Si yo tuviera más dinero, viajaría más. So C, past subjunctive, conditional, for example. The complex C clause is going to give you more of a reflecting back or a hindsight is 2020 type thing. So, si yo hubiera tenido más dinero, habría viajado más. So if I were to have had more money, I would travel more, or would have traveled more, sorry. And so that's what we're gonna work with complex C clauses. So let's have a look. As you can see here on the board behind me, I've got four examples in Spanish and then one example in English. This is going to be one at the end you're going to translate. But 1 through 3 are the same structure, and then number 4 is number 3, but rearranged. And so I'm going to show you how that works because, I'm going to teach you this structure all the way through so we can dial the idea and concept in. And then right here, I'm going to show you that you can, rearrange it. You can, in effect, put the conditional perfect in the front and the C and past perfect subjunctive in the back, right? And so that's all. That's all I was going to do towards the end. And like I said, you've got homework. You got to translate this. And so just to reiterate, just so we're clear before we really get going, I said that the structure itself is it's the C. It's the word C, right? If. And then we pair it with the past perfect subjunctive, right? I know I've already said this, but I think it's worth repeating. The past perfect subjunctive and then the conditional perfect. So those are the elements, the tenses, if you will, that we're going to use for this. And so let's check out how that actually works. And so right here with number 1, we have si yo hubiera sabido, if, right? Of course, if I were to have known, that's what hubiera sabido is. Si yo hubiera sabido, if I were to have known, right? That, of course, this means that, as you know, right? That it was raining, que estaba lloviendo. And notice here we have a little comma, right? It's sort of breaking up the two parts of this sentence, right? We have a comma there. And then that gives us this, the space in the back, if you will, to use the conditional perfect. And so I'm going to start over and read it all the way through. Si yo hubiera sabido que estaba lloviendo, no habría ido a la playa hoy, right? If I were to have known that it was raining, I would not have gone to the beach today, right? So again, notice that it's not necessarily a hypothetical as much as reflecting back, right? And so that's what these complex C clauses allow you to do. So, you packed up, you went to the beach, got there, it's pouring down rain, lightning, thunder, the whole thing. And so that's when this would be useful to say, right? If I were to have known that it was raining, I would not have gone to the beach today. And so notice my translation as well. If I were to have known, right? Now, a lot of times in English, colloquially, you might say, someone would say, if I would have known. Right? If I would have known. And so for the sake of grammar, I'm going to show you sort of its direct translation and how, because I want it to be tight grammatically, right? And so that's why you're going to see me keep using that if I were to have known or if I were to have when I'm using the past perfect subjunctive, because we want to be grammatically correct, right? And so I just wanted to make note of that, because I know that colloquially in English, you might hear, or we all might say it slightly differently than what is written here. And so it's just worth, I want to make note of that. And so, again, if I were to have known, si yo hubiera sabido, and then on the back end here, I would not have gone. No habría ido a la playa. Now, you could put yo there if you want. Yo no habría ido, if you want. You don't have to, but if you want, you can certainly do that. Let's have a look at number 2 here. Si tú no hubieras comido tanto, no te habrías enfermado. So let's have a look at what that's saying in English. So we have if you, right, kind of following this model, if you will, if you were to not have, or were not to have, either one, I'm going to put them both here, right? If you were to not have, or were not to have eaten so much, right? That's what tanto means, or as much or so much, right? You would not have got sick, right? And so that's what you're saying in English. So, si tú no hubieras comido tanto, no te habrías enfermado, right? And so again, we have the if, of course, it's always accompanying that variation of the past subjunctive. In this case, of course, it's the past perfect subjunctive. So, si tú no hubieras comido tanto, no te habrías enfermado. So let's break that down, right? We have here, if you were not to have eaten, I like that better. So let's just put not to have eaten. If you were not to have eaten so much, right? And that's where this were not to have eaten, right? Were not to have, that's the negative version of this, right? See, if you were not to have, and then eaten, of course, is the past participle of comer. You would not have got sick, right? No te habrías enfermado. And so we have here, no te habrías enfermado. Now, here's the thing. Enfermado, of course, is the past participle, but it's enfermarse, right, as a reflexive verb. Now, we're using that on this back end. And so, of course, the reflexive pronoun has to agree, which is why we have te there, right, because it's agreeing with to. And then, of course, habrías is to in the conditional. It's part of the conditional perfect, right? The haber in the conditional, and then the past participle. And so that's where enfermado is coming from, right? You have that past participle, enfermado, but sort of taken as a whole, right? We have to agree here with the reflexive, right? Because the reflexive's there. We can't just abandon it. We gotta use it, right? And then, of course, we make this a perfect tense, right? And it's the conditional perfect. So hopefully that made sense there. Sort of a long-winded explanation on that, but let's move along to number 3. Here we have, si ellos hubieran tenido más dinero, right? Let's get a little comma in there, right? Keep that grammar tight, right? Si ellos hubieran tenido más dinero, habrían comprado ese carro, right? And so let's have a look at what we're saying in English. If, of course, they were to have had more money, right? If they were to have had more money, si ellos hubieran tenido más dinero, comma, they, of course, would have bought that car, right? Because ese carro is that car. So let's have a look again. Si ellos hubieran tenido más dinero, si accompanied with the past perfect subjunctive, comma, habrían comprado ese carro, right? And so hopefully that makes sense. And so in English, again, it's if they were to have had more money. Wow, I got to work on my English apparently. So if they were to have had more money, right? If, of course, were to have had more money, they would have bought that car, right? And so hopefully that made sense. And like I said earlier, number 3 and number 4 are the same thing, effectively. It's just I've rearranged that sentence. And so, ellos habrían comprado ese carro si hubieran tenido más dinero. So all we did was take the conditional perfect, put it in the front, and take the si and the past perfect subjunctive, put it in the back. And so let's see what that looks like again in English. They would, it's going to be the same thing, just rearranged. So they would have bought that car, right? And so in other words, I took this section and moved it to the front, and I took the front section and moved it to the back. So notice, see those almost in like 2 blocks, right? So they would have bought that car if, right, here's our C, they were to have had more money, right? So again, we just rearranged it because there's really 2 ways of doing this, and all it is on the structure I showed you from 1 to 3 is C, past perfect subjunctive, that block, and then the second block is conditional perfect, which finishes off this sort of recapping or recount or hindsight of a situation. Of course, in the case of number 4, it's just, like I said, inverting it and putting the conditional perfect first, and then putting the C part, if you will, on the back side. Now, I guess it's worth noting that right here, we do not put a comma, whereas here we have a comma, here we have a comma. And so that was breaking up those 2 blocks, if you will. In this case, it just flows all the way through. So we have, ellos habrían comprado ese carro si hubieran tenido más dinero. So you don't really pause, right? Whereas with these, you did that pause, right? And so, and then again, just to reiterate in English, they would have bought that car if they were to have more money, right? So it really works similarly in English. And again, you can sort of rearrange them as well in English. And so that brings me down here to number 4, where it's your turn, right? And so, of course, if you want, you can pause. That's on you. And then you can try this and then come back and join us. And we'll be here to translate it with you. So for all of you who are just anxious to sort of move along, as always, we're going to keep rolling. So let's have a look at this. We have, if I were to have had a plane ticket, I would have gone with them to Cuba. So let's take a look. Of course, we have if at the front. So we know we're going to start out with the C, right? And so we know that will be accompanied by past perfect subjunctive. So let's have a look. Si yo hubiera, right? That's our past perfect subjunctive. Si yo hubiera tenido, right? If I were to have had, sorry. So we have that is here and then all that is there. Si yo hubiera tenido un pasaje, it's really a ticket, but pasaje works for plane ticket as well. Si yo hubiera tenido un pasaje, comma, right? We got to put our comma there. Yo habría ido con ellos a Cuba, right? There you go. So, si yo hubiera tenido un pasaje, if I were to have had a ticket, yo habría ido con ellos a Cuba. So, if I were to have had a ticket or plane ticket, I would have gone with them to Cuba. Now, little bonus round. Let's rearrange that and see what we can do. And so again, if you want to pause, by all means do so. We're just going to go ahead and write this one up here. And so let's rearrange it. So we're going to start from, we're going to take this block, essentially. We're going to bring it to the front. That's what we're going to do. And so, yo habría ido con ellos a Cuba is what we're going to do. Yo habría ido con ellos a Cuba. Right? No comma, no nothing. We just ease into the C part. Si yo hubiera tenido un pasaje. So there you go. You have si yo, well, this is, we'll go with option A just to recap. And then option B. Si yo hubiera tenido un pasaje, yo habría ido con ellos a Cuba. That's option 1, right? And that's the one we've essentially been working with all the way through. Now, option B is just rearranging that. That's all we're doing. Yo habría ido con ellos a Cuba si yo hubiera tenido un pasaje. So, like I said, this is really showing you how to do complex C clauses. On the one hand, we have this structure up here, which puts C at the front, always accompanied by a version of the past subjunctive. In this case, of course, the past perfect subjunctive, followed by on the back end with the conditional perfect. And then over here, our option B is putting the conditional perfect in the front and then sort of flowing through with the if or the C and the past perfect. So hopefully this was helpful and at least trying to conceptualize how these complex C clauses work. And as always, if you need help, check out down in the description box. I'll put some stuff down there for you. And again, as always, buena suerte y adios.